Troubling trends being revealed as New York City's finances get scrutinized during budget hearings at City Hall.
Yeah, the NYPD on track to spend $1 billion in overtime, even though officers are taking significantly longer to respond to serious crimes, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. Joining us this morning is City Councilman Restler, who is responsible for keeping tabs on the city's spending. So, Councilman, good to see you. Welcome to the morning show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You know, we're knee deep in the budget hearings this week, right? Which gives you an idea to how some of these tax dollars are being spent. The NYPD obviously sending out for their overtime spending. The argument could be made on the opposite end that it's needed given what we're seeing play out on the streets and the subways. What are your thoughts here on the spending?
Well, we've seen the NYPD is on pace to spend about $1 billion in overtime this year. And we're seeing that we have about the same number of officers as last year, so there hasn't been a change in that regard. But we are seeing that NYPD is taking way longer to respond to serious crimes in progress. We're talking about when shots are fired, assaults with a weapon. This is the core of NYPD's job, to respond to serious crime and to prevent it from happening. And it's up 2 minutes. Their response time is up to about 7 minutes year over year. For years, the NYPD had responded to serious crimes in under 5 minutes. That has changed. And it's a good question, why? What we found is that the NYPD has shifted their focus. They've returned to an era of broken windows policing. So they're issuing about 4 times as many summons for minor violations, things like when your neighbor's drinking on the stoop, as when the mayor came into office. That's what the NYPD is spending their time on, not on the serious crime that New Yorkers are most concerned about.
And misconduct on the NYPD, those complaints have gone up as well. How is that affecting government spending?
Since the mayor came into office, we've seen more and more New Yorkers are getting swept up in our criminal justice system. I mentioned minor violations are way up, arrests are way up, incarceration for adults is up by about 30%. The number of kids that are sent to jail has doubled since the mayor came into office. Not surprising, we also see a lot more complaints against the NYPD for misconduct. They're up about 60% year over year. That's a big jump. And that can have a really big impact on the city's finances. What we've seen is that in the last 6 or so years, the city has spent $500 million on settlements for police misconduct. And just last year alone, we spent over $100 million. And as the trend increases of more and more complaints of police misconduct, we're going to see the number of settlements increase, the number of payouts increase.
And in fairness, in terms of numbers on crime, we had the mayor on earlier talking about subway crime being down. Overall crime year to year is down. So there's your numbers, there's what he's saying, and then there's somewhere in the middle, there's truth, right?
Crime may be down, but what we're seeing is police misconduct is up, arrests are up, incarceration is up. We're sweeping up more and more predominantly low-income and black and brown New Yorkers in our criminal justice system. That's the approach that he's taking, and I think it has harmful consequences. We do not want to return to the era of mass incarceration in New York City.
Can we talk about the jails? Because on Monday, the city's budget director admitted Rikers would not close by 2027. So what is the delay there? And what about the spending on building new jails?
So the budget director said the quiet part out loud at the budget hearing on Monday. I'm not sure he was supposed to, but the cat got out of the bag that the city is nowhere close to closing Rikers Island. If the mayor gets reelected, that he will not close Rikers Island in his term in office. He is not committed to that goal. And spending for the cost of the borough-based jails has gone way up. The initial plan was about $8 billion. Now we're talking closer to $12 billion, according to the budget director. But I would say that this is a necessary investment. We're closing the largest jail complex in the country. There's a dozen jails on Rikers Island. We're shutting all of them down and replacing them with a smaller borough-based jail system, and it costs money to build new state-of-the-art, modern, hopefully more humane facilities. My real concern is that we don't replicate the horrors of Rikers Island in these borough-based jails. We know that a majority of the people on Rikers have serious mental illness. But in the mayor's plan, he just slashed in half the number of beds that are designed to meet the needs of people with mental illness. That doesn't make any sense.
So what are you pushing for in the council for all of these things, right? For all the things you're mentioning in terms of spending, how do you go about changing it? Because the budget has to be voted on by the council, so what does it look like?
Dan, we've had 7 rounds of budget cuts under Mayor Adams in just over 2 years. It's had huge impacts at every single city agency, and the quality of services that the city is providing has deteriorated significantly. So we have a lot of work to do to restore funding for early childhood education, to restore funding for community colleges. One of the things that I'm really concerned about is the mayor just announced steep cuts to in climate justice initiatives that would reduce our carbon emissions from the city's buildings and the city's fleet. That has to be reversed. So we've got a lot of work to do over the next 3 months to try to get to a just budget for the people of New York before we adopt the city budget at the end of June.
And honestly, it's felt like a game of ping pong lately.
I mean, you get whiplash following Mayor Adams' allegations of, budget shortfalls or surpluses. It's hard to know what's real, and I think there's a credibility gap with this administration that New Yorkers don't trust what they say.
All right, Councilman Restler, thanks so much for being with us
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.